Ukraine just did something in Russia that nobody thought was possible. They are terrified. Picture this. It is nighttime somewhere deep inside Russia, not near the front line, not near Ukraine, deep inside. A truck driver is parked near an airbase in Siberia, more than 4,000 kilometers from Ukraine. He thinks he is delivering wooden log cabins. He followed instructions on his phone about where to park. He has no idea what is inside the cargo. Then the roof of the container opens remotely, and 117 drones rise into the night air simultaneously. From trucks parked near 5 Russian air bases spread across 5 time zones, the drone operators are sitting in Ukraine thousands of kilometers away, guiding each drone to a specific point on a specific aircraft, not randomly, precisely. One drone's footage showed it landing directly on the wing of a Tu-95 strategic bomber right next to the fuel tank. The fuel tank that was full, because the bomber had been loaded and ready to launch missiles at Ukrainian cities that same night. The fireball was visible for miles. By morning, Ukraine had destroyed or damaged 41 Russian military aircraft in a single night. 1/3 of Russia's entire strategic cruise missile carrier fleet. Aircraft that took decades to build. Aircraft that Russia cannot replace because they stopped making them when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Total damage $7 billion. Total cost of the drones Ukraine used roughly $2,000 each. Putin called it a terrorist attack. Russian military bloggers called it Russia's Pearl Harbor. And here's the part that should make every person watching this stop and think. That was just one operation. Ukraine has been doing this in different forms, with different weapons, at different scales, every single week. And Russia has no answer. Let me give you the full picture of what Ukraine has actually done to Russia, because the numbers that come out of this war are so large that most people stop processing them after the first sentence. Russia has lost 1.32 million soldiers since February 24, 2022, 1,320,000 people. To put that in context, that is more than the entire population of Dallas, Texas, dead or wounded and removed from the battlefield. Over the past single day before this video was made, Russia lost another 1,040 soldiers. Every single day. Over 1,000. Gone. And here is the number from the competitor script that the channel you are watching analyzed. 96% of confirmed Russian casualties in the recent period were inflicted not by Ukrainian artillery, not by tanks, not by infantry, by drones. Small machines that a person could carry in a backpack. This ratio has never existed in the history of warfare. In every war before this, infantry, artillery, and armored vehicles were the primary killers. In Ukraine in 2025 and 2026, a machine that costs a few $1,000s is doing what entire divisions used to do. Russia sends men. Ukraine sends machines. Russia loses millions with every engagement. Ukraine loses thousands. And the gap between those two numbers gets wider every single month. Screen text. 1,320,000 Russian soldiers lost. Let us go deep into what Ukraine actually pulled off on June 1, 2025, because Operation Spiderweb is one of the most audacious military operations in modern history, and most people outside Ukraine have never heard the full story. For 18 months, Ukrainian intelligence agents had been secretly infiltrating Russia's interior. Not fighting, planning, mapping, placing assets. They identified 5 Russian air bases that housed the strategic bombers being used to launch missiles at Ukrainian cities every night. Belaya Air Base in Siberia, 4,300 kilometers from Ukraine. Olenya Air Base near Murmansk in the Arctic, 1,900 kilometers away. Dyagilevo near Ryazan, Ivanovo-Severny, and Ukrainka. These bases were considered completely safe by Russia. Untouchable. Russia's strategic depth, the vast geographic distance between Ukraine and these bases, was supposed to be its protection. Ukrainian intelligence understood something different. Strategic depth only matters if your enemy has to move toward you. Ukraine did not move toward these bases. Ukraine placed weapons inside Russia first, and then activated them. FPV drones were smuggled inside Russia, hidden in truck shipments, concealed inside log cabins inside shipping containers. The truck drivers, ordinary civilians hired through normal logistics channels, had no idea. They received instructions on where to park. They parked. And on the night of June 1st, Russia's Military Transport Aviation Day, a national holiday celebrating Russian air power, the roofs opened. And Ukraine struck Russian air power at home while Russians were celebrating it. Screen text. 18 months of planning, 1 night of execution. Now let us talk about the actual weapons Ukraine is using, because understanding the technology is what makes this story so shocking. The FPV drone first-person view is essentially a racing drone modified for war. It is guided by a human operator wearing goggles who sees exactly what the drone sees in real time. The operator sits in a bunker in Ukraine, the drone flies in Russia, and in between artificial intelligence. Ukraine's newer drone models use AI that allows them to continue flying to their target even if the signal is jammed. The drone does not need continuous communication with its operator. It uses preloaded terrain maps. It uses threat recognition algorithms. It identifies its target. It locks. And it strikes completely autonomously even if Russia's electronic warfare systems cut the signal entirely. Russia spent billions of dollars on electronic warfare systems. The Krasuka, the Pol, Tu-1, the Murmansk BN, all designed for one specific purpose: to jam drone signals, to bring them down. And they worked in 2022. They worked in 2023. Even through much of 2024, Russian electronic warfare was stopping Ukrainian drones. But in 2025, something changed. Ukraine produced drones that use no signal, drones that cannot be jammed because there is nothing to jam. Billions of dollars in Russian electronic warfare investment became useless overnight. Think about what a $2,000 drone just did. It flew past a $25 million Tor M2 air defense system, past billions of dollars of electronic warfare equipment, and destroyed a Tu-95 strategic bomber worth $250 million that Russia cannot replace. That exchange ratio is not just a military problem for Russia. It is a mathematical catastrophe. And Operation Spiderweb was not the end. It was the beginning of a pattern that has continued every week since, including right now, this week, while you are watching this video. On the night of April 17th into April 18th, 2026, Ukraine struck 4 major Russian energy facilities in a single night. The Novokuybishevsk oil refinery in Russia's Samara region, one of the most important energy nodes in Russia, processing 8.8 million tons of crude per year and producing more than 20 types of commercial products, used to supply Russian forces. Satellite imagery showed thick black smoke rising over the facility. The Syzran refinery, also in Samara Oblast, with footage showing fire breaking out near the storage tank farm holding crude oil and finished petroleum products. The Tikhoretsk oil pumping station in the Krasnodar region, and the Baltic seaport of Vysotsk, a Lukoil export terminal, where 27 drones struck simultaneously and a fire broke out that required 224 personnel and 56 pieces of emergency equipment to fight. Ukraine's drone forces commander said publicly these facilities support Russia's armed forces directly. Russia's defense ministry did not acknowledge the strikes. The regional governors who cannot hide the fires their citizens can see confirmed them. A burning refinery in Samara is not near the front line. Samara is deep inside Russia. This is what Ukraine has done. It has made Russia's geographic depth meaningless. There is no safe rear area anymore. If it has a fuel tank, Ukraine can reach it. Screen text. No safe rear area left in Russia. Here is why hitting oil refineries and fuel depots matters so much beyond the dramatic footage of fires. A tank without fuel is a very expensive piece of metal sitting in a field doing nothing. A missile cannot be launched without the fuel infrastructure that produces and transports jet propellant. An aircraft cannot fly without aviation fuel refined at the exact facilities Ukraine is systematically destroying. Russia's war machine runs on oil, and Ukraine is choking the pipeline at the source. When Ukraine destroys a refinery processing 8.8 million tons of crude per year, it is not just destroying a building. It is removing 20 types of military-relevant petroleum products from the supply chain that feeds Russian forces on the front line. A burning engine block in a factory 1,000 kilometers from the front line means a missile that cannot be launched that night. A missile that cannot be launched means a Ukrainian city that does not get bombed that night. A city that does not get bombed means Ukrainian workers who show up for work the next morning and build more drones. This is not random destruction. This is a precisely calculated campaign to strangle Russia's ability to conduct war at the source. Ukraine's head of military intelligence said it directly targeting Russian oil terminals strengthens Ukraine's position in any negotiations, and Russia responded the only way it knows how. After Ukraine struck the refineries, Russia launched a 700 drone and missile barrage on Ukrainian civilians, killing 16 people, wounding 100 more. Russia's defense ministry called it retaliation for Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil facilities. Think about that exchange. Ukraine destroys oil refineries funding Russia's war. Russia kills sleeping Ukrainian civilians in response. Screen text. Ukraine destroys oil, Russia kills civilians. And here is the part that has the Kremlin genuinely terrified. Russia does not have an answer to this, and the reason it does not have an answer goes 3 layers deep. Layer 1, the chip crisis. AI-powered drones do not work without advanced microchips, the kind made by NVIDIA, fabricated in Taiwan, designed with American software. Sanctions cut Russia's access to these chips. Russia can get some through smuggling at enormous cost and in limited quantities. Ukraine obtains the same chips directly, legally, in unlimited quantities. The starting line of this technology race is not equal. It is not even close to equal. Layer 2, the data gap. What makes Ukraine's AI drones so lethal is not just the algorithm. It is the data that feeds the algorithm. Ukraine has been testing these drones in real combat against a real enemy under real conditions every single day for over 2 years. Over 800,000 verified drone strikes documented by video footage in 2025 alone. No simulation, no military exercise. Real battlefield data at a scale no other country on Earth possesses. Russia develops in laboratories. Ukraine tests in combat every morning and updates the next generation of drones the same week. Layer 3 time. By the time Russia figures out how to defeat one generation of Ukrainian drones, Ukraine is already 2 generations ahead. This is not a gap that Russia can close by throwing money at it. It is a compound gap that grows exponentially every month. China has drone technology, but Beijing has not transferred it fully to Moscow because China fears Western sanctions. North Korea is sending soldiers, but soldiers are exactly what Ukraine has already figured out how to destroy at scale. Iran has Shahed drones, but Shaheds are not AI-powered, and Ukraine already defeated them years ago. Russia's allies cannot give Russia what Russia needs. And Russia cannot build it fast enough itself. Screen text. 3 layers Russia cannot solve. Now here is the part that balances this picture, because this is not a video about Ukraine winning easily. Russia still has massive military force, and it is using that force against Ukrainian civilians in a way that should be reported honestly. Russia launched 700 drones and missiles in a single barrage on Ukrainian cities in a single night this week. The attack stretched from daytime into nighttime for hours. 16 people were killed, over 100 wounded. In Kyiv, a 54-year-old woman named Tetiana Sokol described hiding in her hallway with her dog as 2 missiles hit near her home. Windows shattered from the blast wave. Quote, "On the 3rd attack, everything broke, everything flew. We were shocked, we didn't know where to go." In Sloviansk, in Donetsk, an educational institution was destroyed. In Sumy, a medical facility was hit. In Kharkiv, 11 people injured in a single attack on residential areas. Russia launched 1,354 attacks in the Donetsk region in a single day, damaging 30 civilian facilities. None of these are military targets. Russia's strategy, when it cannot defeat Ukraine's military technology, is to exhaust Ukraine's civilian population, to break the will of the people when it cannot break the capability of the army. Ukraine's president said after the barrage another night has proven that Russia does not deserve any easing of global policy or lifting of sanctions. Germany is getting access to Ukraine's drone expertise in exchange for more military aid. The exchange that is happening is clear. Ukraine gives the world its drone knowledge. The world gives Ukraine more air defense. Russia gives Ukraine terror. Ukraine gives Russia fires in Siberia. Step back from the daily strikes and the casualty numbers for a moment. Because what is happening in Ukraine right now is not just a war between 2 countries. It is the laboratory where the future of all military conflict is being written. Every general in every country on Earth is watching Ukraine, every defense ministry, every military technology company, and what they are learning is something that overturns assumptions that have governed warfare for a century. The assumption that bigger armies win, that more expensive weapons win, that the country with more tanks and missiles and soldiers has the advantage. Ukraine has systematically disproved every one of those assumptions. With a defense budget a fraction of Russia's, with a population a third the size, with a military that had almost nothing in 2022, Ukraine has produced 5 million FPV drones per year. Ukraine struck air bases in Siberia. Ukraine is hitting oil refineries 1,000 kilometers inside Russia. And Ukraine has inflicted 1.32 million casualties on the largest army in Europe. Saudi Arabia ordered Ukraine's drone defense doctrine. The UAE is buying Ukraine's systems. Gulf states are sending money for Ukraine's technology because it protected their oil infrastructure from Iranian Shahed drones. A country that was begging for weapons 4 years ago is now an arms exporter. The ultimate irony, Ukraine is using the data from defending against Iranian drones to sell anti-drone systems to the Gulf states that were Iran's neighbors. War data has become Ukraine's most valuable export. And the country that thought it could erase Ukraine from the map in 3 days has now lost 1.32 million soldiers, proving that the map was never going to be erased. Here is where everything stands right now. Ukraine just struck 4 Russian oil refineries and energy facilities in a single night deep inside Russia using drones that Russia cannot shoot down because they do not rely on signals that can be jammed. Russia responded with a 700 drone terror barrage on Ukrainian sleeping civilians because that is the only thing it has left. Operation Spiderweb destroyed 1/3 of Russia's strategic bomber fleet in a single night using drones launched from inside Russia itself, smuggled in trucks by people who thought they were delivering log cabins. Over 1.32 million Russian soldiers have been removed from the battlefield. 96% of recent casualties inflicted not by armies, but by machines costing thousands of dollars each. And none of this was supposed to be possible. In February 2022, Russia launched what it called a special military operation, expected to end in 3 days. The Ukrainian government would flee, the military would collapse, the country would fall. 4 years later, Ukraine is exporting weapons. Ukraine is training the world in drone warfare. Ukraine is striking Siberia. And Russia is launching 700 drone barrages against apartment buildings because it has run out of ways to fight the actual Ukrainian military. The title of this video asked, did Ukraine just do something nobody thought was possible? The answer is not past tense. Ukraine is doing it right now. Today, tonight, and tomorrow. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story changes every single day. And the next thing Ukraine does that nobody thought was possible is already being planned.